I'm here at the Learning Ideas Conference winter event interviews and having a chance now to talk about creativity and poetry in business. And so Christina runs Poetry in Business, TalkShop, and a host of other related creative programs and has worked in the creative field as part of her educational work for many, many years. So it's great to have you here with me.
Thanks so much, David, for having me.
So if you could maybe start off, just tell us a little bit about poetry in business, and that's such an interesting concept, things that maybe people wouldn't assume would go as well together, and they do in fact go well together. So if you could talk a little bit about what your program is and how it works.
Yeah, poetry in business has developed over the years, and I have to say it has emerged out of my professional practice. And as you know, I'm coming originally from translation science and journalism and community building. And I have really dived deep into training and training development, curriculum development. And I've been working with higher education, but also the public sector and the corporate sector. And I have to say that over the years, the poetry in business concept has evolved because I've realized that we need a more creative approach to training, to skills development, to the L&D sector, if you want. And poetry in business, basically, it's a synergy between analytical thinking, strategic thinking, and artistic, poetic impulses, if you want. So I hope this explains a little bit, and maybe I can explain a bit more. So I work across different hierarchies, across cultures, across professions and disciplines. And I think that we can best develop so-called future skills, because that's the focus of poetry in business, by using a lot of creative impulses, by using artistic impulses, and by bringing this together with strategic learning design.
Oh, that sounds really fascinating. What happens when someone comes to you and you have a workshop, a poetry and business workshop? How large are the workshops usually, and what kinds of things do you do?
Yeah, again, that depends on the learner's needs, on my client's needs, and the workshop. Well, this goes from half-day workshops to 3-day workshops to workshops that are extended over a term. So regular meetings, for example, where learners meet once a month or something. I think the smallest size, if you want, is a 2-hour workshop. But that's really the minimum. And of course, the effect or the impact is bigger when there are regular meetings where we can do a series of impulses and different learning activities. And yeah, as I say, learning activities. So the whole thing is based on experience and experiential learning. And depending on the learner's or the customer's needs, I need to design the learning experience. So usually, learners come to me with a request. So they say they want to, for example, improve their communication skills, or they want to improve their critical thinking, or they want to come up with more innovative solutions. So the good thing about the poetry and business learning experience is that you can, or I can put it into context, because the whole thing is designed according to the context of the learners. Maybe to explain that a bit better, I usually use a multi-method approach, the so-called 2CG approach, and 2CG stands for content and context specific generic competency coaching. And generic competencies are what nowadays we call future skills. So nowadays everyone talks about 21st century skills or future skills, and these include, communication skills, critical thinking skills, creativity, problem-solving skills, but also empathy, imagination, analytical skills even. And coming back to your question, so what happens in such a workshop? It actually depends on the problem we need to solve with the learning. So what kind of skills do the learners want to improve? What's their professional context? So where are they coming from? I work a lot with engineers, for example, but I also work with medical experts, with lawyers, with environmental specialists, with public officials, a lot of different people. And the 2ZG method allows me to design according to their context and needs.
Yeah, so one quick question to follow up. Where does the poetry come in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for asking that. So when you hear poetry, or when people hear poetry, they usually get scared, because they think, oh my God, are we going to write poems? Are we going to do literature? Is this going to be super intellectual? So no, we're not writing poems, maybe occasionally, but poetry in the poetry in business concept means disruptive impulses. And when I say disruptive impulses, it's artistic impulses that create a kind of confusion, in the learner, or inspire the learners to think out of the box. So for example, sometimes, I do invite poets, and we do read a bit of poetry. Sometimes I work with actors, actresses, sometimes with visual artists, with sculptures, so dancers even. So a lot of different poetry, in inverted commas, if you want, is applied and used as a creative impulse that inspires learners. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So then, have you had a chance to get some feedback as time has gone on as to whether people were able to put these skills back into practice when they went back on the job, and how that went?
Yeah, that's a great question. People tell me that they are more inspired when they get back to the workplace. They can apply different tools and methods that we use in the workshops. So they run their team meetings differently. They try out new things. They try to inspire their teams. So sometimes, I work with leaders, sometimes with employees, also with people from the shop floor. So depending, again, on their context, they apply what they learn in our workshops in many different ways. So either using different tools themselves to push their teams into new directions, to inspire their teams, to create a better learning culture in their organization, to even drive a structural change, because for this, people need to apply different strategies or different methodologies. And once they have experienced it themselves, it's easier to apply it in their work environment.
So this is a really interesting approach, because it's a creative approach to business, and I think often for an audience maybe that's not as accustomed to thinking about things in that way. You mentioned a little bit about your background before, but just to sort of summarize, like what got you into this? Where did this is a creative idea that you came up with, a workshop that you run and continue to run. What made you put this together, and how did your process work in designing this in the first place?
Thanks for asking me that question. And I think I'm just really passionate about what I do. And it's like coming from inside of me, from my curiosity, from my wish to explore new pathways. And of course, it's linked to my professional experience. And, I'm a community of practice facilitator, and I have gained a lot of experience in facilitating collaborative learning groups. And then I think also my translation science background plays in, because when you study languages and translation, then you immerse into different cultures. You get to know different perspectives. You get to use to changing perspectives. So what's routine and normal for me, I've realized it's really not so normal for my learners sometimes. So I have a good example. I worked with engineers the other day, and And it was really cool when they told me, wow, that's what we need. We need more poetry because we are so narrow-minded. So we always do it the same way. And it's great to think out of the box. And this methodology helps us to think out of the box. And I think that's what's so rewarding also when you design learning experiences, when you see there's an impact.
Yeah, I think that's probably what the reason, the sort of the payoff, I think, for all the hard work that you do to design something is to see it really work for people and resonate for people. Let me ask a different kind of question. People come and take your workshop. Are there times when they come back for another workshop or a follow-on experience to try to sort of take things in a different direction, or just to sort of, get back into the creative spirit if it's been a while since they took the workshop?
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, that depends. So I work with learners who come back because they love the creative experience and they love the self-development. So they just enjoy getting in touch with their intuition or creative voice a bit more. And they enjoy being in a safe space where they can experiment. But then I also have clients, customers who come back because they want to push change and transformation in their business context. And that's really inspiring work, because there it's a mix of facilitation and knowledge management even, because communities of practice is probably really still a very effective way of managing your knowledge. I mean, the term management sounds already quite strict, but communities of practice is about communication and sharing experiences, sharing know-how. And I really love to facilitate these teams and groups who want to drive change. So from time to time, we invite artists, or we use artistic impulses to get the community going again, to get new inspiration, to think out of the box. I mean, this is also quite a cliche phrase, but I think it resonates with people somehow, and to explore new pathways.
So you've mentioned business and you mentioned engineers as a group that you've worked with before. Are there other sort of ideal client types with groups that really could particularly benefit from the community of practice approach with a focus on creativity, the way that you've structured it?
Ideal clients. Well, ideal clients are people who are curious and interested and who are motivated to affect change in the real world, I would say. So these are my favorite clients. And you find them actually in all kinds of disciplines, obviously, and in all kinds of fields, ranging from higher education to business and public sector organizations. I have to say that maybe public sector organizations, they are a bit less driven by economic pressure, if you want. So they create maybe more space for these more creative labs, if you want, but depends, I think, very much on the culture of the organization, on leadership. So how much innovation do you really want? How far do you want to go?
Yeah, that may be a great place to wrap up. There's so much that can be done, and your approach has obviously been really successful in a lot of different areas with the community of practice and with this focus on creativity. And I think from what you've been telling us, there's a lot of building creativity without being as direct about it. So you're putting people in situations to explore their own creativity, and you're simply solving the business strategic problem now. You're helping them improve their creative skills overall, and their creative, almost opening the floodgates to their own creativity and what's within them in some ways like that, which is a really, really interesting and successful approach to learning.
I think you have perfectly summed up what poetry in business is all about. So thanks a lot for being open to this approach and for your interest also. And I'm always happy to share my experience, or to get in touch with whoever is interested in exploring new pathways.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for taking the time to talk with me today, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much, David. It was a pleasure. Thanks.